Okay. Ooh, did anybody else hear that?
Yeah.
That's new this month. I haven't heard that before, so you're forewarned.
And then we have to hit continue in order to stay in the meeting.
Yeah, I've got a screen that's come up. Yeah, leave meeting or continue.
You know
so I guess we should all push continue.
Oh, wow. Okay,
Yeah.
good. So, oh, yeah, I see it here on my other screen too. Okay, fantastic. All right, Zoom is, they're changing something all the time. Okay, so I know a lot of you had pieced your border blocks last time, and I know a bunch of you had actually attached them to the center section. So that was most of what session 5 was actually doing. So we talked about, for this next course, adding on a little bit of session 6. So what I'm going to cover today is everything in session 5. And then if you refer to your pattern for session 6, there's actually 2 pages of instructions on the pattern. So what I decided I would do is put the first page of session 6 in this month's work, and then leave the second page of session 6, which is all the half square triangles, for next time. So we're not actually getting ahead. We're just adding a little bit more to one session and to make it our work a little lighter next month. So before we get going with that, though, let's go back to, I'm lost. Okay, so you guys have just completed session 4. So you have now pieced all of your blocks. And I know Barbara was saying she had some trouble with the corner units, the ones that had the red that became the secondary pattern. How did everybody else make out? Okay, you made out okay, Roseanne. Teresa, you're not quite there yet, but you were saying you had some tips. Okay, Marcia, your piecing went okay. And did you have any trouble with the corner units being a little big?
A little bit, but I found that I was out on some of my seams. Okay. So I just redid them and it was fine.
I had the same problem. I found that my corner units were a little big. I think part of it for me was in the pressing. So my second, how many, I guess the blocks 2 through 4, I was a little more careful in the pressing. So that's one way to keep an eye on it. I know Barbara said she had adjusted her seam allowance a little bit to keep things lined up. My only caution with adjusting the seam allowance to get them the right size is that I wonder how it's going to align with the next blocks. So for example, if you're adjusting the seam allowance, I don't know if you can see here in this corner block, it still has to match up with the next block over in the row, or the bottom block on the side border. So there may be a little bit of fiddling to get that to work out, but I think we'll talk about that a little bit more in the lessons today. So everybody seems to be coming along okay. No major heartaches. How many of you have attached or created the borders already from those loose blocks? Barbara's done it. Oh, all of you have done it. Okay. Yeah. All right. Geez, you guys are one step ahead of me. All right. Well, there goes session number 5.
Throw that one out the window.
Okay. So let me, I'm going to open up a document here in a second, and we'll just super quickly go over it for Miss Teresa. And
no, I can do it later.
No, this may help with the next step as well. Okay, it's nerve-wracking time, folks. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. There we go. Hey, look at that. Yeah. Almost looks like I knew what I was doing. All right. So here is the instructions I put together for session number 5. So we start out by taking those blocks from session 3 and building the border center. Okay. And then we add the outside blocks for the side borders. And then to make the top and bottom borders, because of course they're always going on after the side borders in this project. So we make these ones longer. And then once we get them all together to start to attach. So I was a little, if you guys have done this already, it's probably, this is advice is too little too late. However, what I was concerned about was that people were going to have some trouble getting the sizing right. So I measured the center section of my quilt, and I didn't measure right along the edge, because remember, oftentimes the edge is a little bit longer than it is more towards the middle. So I measured about the intersection of that first kind of block there. Then I measured the border. If you are out by, let's say, an inch, I would make some adjustments. If you're within an inch, I think we can probably talk about how to work it in together. So do measure before you add those borders, just to make sure that everything is okay. If your border is too short, unfortunately, that's going to mean a little bit of seam ripping. So it would need to be, you want to kind of distribute that evenly. So if I was too short by a little bit in the side borders, I would pull out this seam here between the block and the center section on each side and take a slightly smaller seam allowance. If I was still too short, then I would probably take out the ones here in the center section and do a slightly smaller seam allowance. If you are too long, it's a little easier to fix, because if you're too long, then in those same places, you take just one thread or maybe two threads bigger a seam allowance, it really does eat up a lot of the length fairly quickly. So that's something you can try if you're too long. Okay. So I'm not going to spend too much time there because you have done much of that already. What I'm going to do, no, I'm not going to do that yet. So hang on a sec. I'm a quilter. I'm allowed to change my mind. There we go. What I will do is, yeah, okay, I'm going to show you a video. One sec to get it all ready. And share screen. Sorry, I'm slouching down trying to see my whole screen here. Hang on a sec. Wouldn't it be nice if these things worked the same way twice in a row? Sorry, ladies, give me 1 second here. I have no idea why it's not letting me do that quite the way I want. Let's try it again. You're seeing what I'm seeing now? Yes, you're seeing that. Okay. There we go. Just wanted to show you a little trick for getting this seam in the border perfect. I did find when I was putting on the first couple borders that some of them were perfect joints and some of them were just not quite where I wanted them. So I've basted this, which means I stitched from here to here, and I used a very long stitch length. I think I used a 4. I probably should have used a 3.5. The 4 is a bit too long. And now when I'm testing it, I'm going to open it and press it back. And I can see here, this one I'm happy with. This one I'm not. I'm off by about 1/8 of an inch here. So this I'm going to redo because I want to make sure that this is lined up absolutely perfectly. I'm just being a little fussy, but I think, you know, this is a fairly easy fix. So I'm going to take out probably an inch or so of stitching, reposition. I'll baste again, double check, and then once this section is basted, then I'll just put my stitch settings back to normal and come re-stitch over the whole thing to secure it. So I'm just pulling out a couple of those basting stitches so I can pull it back over. And I think what I'm actually going to do is press this back my 1/4 of an inch seam allowance. So I'm going to press that into place, and that will let me line it up exactly where I want. So that's giving me that nice straight line there. I'm going to line it up there, hold it as best I can, and come in place. And this is one time where I'm going to pin like a garment sewer would pin. I'm going to pin towards the presser foot so that I can pull it out as I come along. So there, that's looking better. I'm going to baste that one more time and come back. So I've re-stitched here, basting again, and now you can see that's absolutely perfect. If I was being an uber perfectionist, I'd fix that. It's maybe a 32nd of an inch. I'm not worried about that. But here I'm much, much happier. So you can do that by stitching, or if you want, what you could do is press back your 1/4 inch seam allowance, position it in place, and use a glue basting. There are specific washable glue for basting quilts. You can just put a little dot in the strategic points, then you press with the iron to dry those glue dots, and then stitch. So you can make sure that everything is absolutely precise.
I need to do.
Okay. So would that have helped a little bit, Barbara?
I was just going to say, that's exactly what's happened in every case, how it meets up both ways.
Okay.
One side matches perfectly. The other side, the corner block piece, is too wide. In every case, one side's perfect towards the center of the quilt, towards the outside edge. That line, the stripe on the corner block, is like just 1/8 of an inch. All 4 blocks did the same. One's perfect, the other one is wider. It's wider in every case, from the corner block to the sides that it has match up to.
So had I been on the ball, I would have done the basting with the first, like when I was putting these first borders together. I didn't have as much trouble there as I was having when I was adding the border in session 6, that part right in there. So and if I wasn't doing it on camera, if I was just doing it on my own, I probably would have glue basted it, just because I find you can really get exactly where you want. You can get it to dry the glue with the iron right at the machine, and then you can stitch it. You can even baste stitch it to make sure that it's holding the way that you think it will. I do find that basting it in place prevents you from the frustration of having to rip out the bigger seam. However, what that does then sometimes is causes you problems in other areas of putting the border on. So when I was attaching the top and bottom border, my corner blocks were bigger. So what I did was I did my best to pin at the intersections to get the red triangle to line up. But then when I held my quilt up vertically and looked at it, which side was bigger and which side was smaller, I wanted to stitch the majority of the border with the pieced blocks up, because I didn't want the seam allowances flipping all over the place. But because my corner blocks were bigger, I wanted to stitch the corner blocks down so the feed dogs would help take up a little bit of that length. So I actually stitched the top and bottom borders on in 3 different sections.
I did the same thing.
Okay. And it's a bit of a pain. It takes a minute or 2 longer, but it really, really helps with easing things in nicely. So because I had to ease just in those 2 corner blocks, I didn't want, I still kept the center section aligned with the pins of the seam intersections. So I stitched, let's go over that again, because it is kind of confusing when I'm not being able to show you exactly. I stitched the corner blocks section of the border with the corner blocks down because I wanted to ease in the extra fullness. The center section of the border in here, I felt that there were more seam allowances on the pieced block section versus this previous border. So I wanted to have those up so that I wasn't flipping every seam allowance as it was going underneath the presser foot. I wanted to have it up so I could control it a little better. So I stitched the corner blocks first and then flipped it over and stitched the middle section. Okay, does that make sense, Teresa? Yeah. So then when I started the next, so now I'm into session 6. Okay, let me just pull up our assembly diagram for session 6. And this is only part 1. We're going to do part 2 next time. Okay, so in session 6, the borders have these fun little units. That is what's giving you that secondary pattern. It's carrying the red out from the center section, which I love. I think it's such a great look. So there's nothing really complicated to these. We've done all of this before with our flying geese. Instead of having 2 number 5s, they've added the chisel shape, the number 9. So our side borders are a little shorter. And then the top and bottom borders have the cornerstone square added to them. Now, there is a mistake in the pattern in session 6. It tells you to cut this center piece here. The first version of the pattern says 2.5 by 32.5. The second version says 2.5 by 36.5, which is correct. So I knew by measuring my quilt that I was very close as far as the sizing of the quilt. So I wanted to keep the border the same size. So I cut this border center section to 2.5 by 36.5 and added these 2 outside pieces. And then you saw I basted as I just showed you in the video. So long stitch length until you're happy with the positioning. And then you go back and stitch the entire seam again with your correct stitch length, sorry. So here is where, in these yellow circles here, that's where I found the basting to be most helpful within the yellow ovals. Now, had I been thinking better in month 5, I would have basted in here as well when I was creating those pieced borders. Okay, I think that's good. Any questions there? So that's all we're going to do for session 6 is those blue borders that lead that nice secondary pattern out. I will show you one other little snippet of a video if I can get it pulled up neatly. Bear with me one sec. I'm going to forward it so we don't watch the whole thing.
So, we'll start at the intersection.
Okay, now I will come back and share with you. I didn't want to bore you to tears. So strange. It's not It's looking different than it did last time. I know I sound like I'm crazy every time I say that. However, I assure you, it can't just be me. I'm gonna fast forward us a bit. I'm doing some really speedy painting. Okay, now okay, just as a prelude, this is where, this is what I was talking about before, about easing in the outside corner blocks that were a little big. So I'll show you that here. Last thing I'm going to do is just lift and double check if I have any areas that have extra fabric in them. And if I do have those anywhere, it's in these outside corner blocks, and they are a little longer than the center section, so there's some fullness there. So what I could do is I could stitch with this side down, the border down, but the border has so many more seam allowances that I really would like to stitch with it up. So maybe what I'll try instead is I'll stitch just those two sections, just those two blocks, with the block down so that the feed dogs will take in some of that fullness, and then the whole center section I'll stitch with the border up. So it's a tiny bit more work, but it will give you a nicer result at the machine. So I brought this to the machine. This first block, the block and the border is a little bigger than the center section of the quilt. So just for that section of the block, first block, I'm going to stitch with the block down so that the feed dogs will help draw in the fullness there to make it fit better. And then once I've got to the edge of that block, I will reverse and stitch with the border up, because the border has a lot more seam allowances, I think, and I'd like to be able to see that they're not getting twisted. The majority of it fits nicely. It's just those corner blocks that were giving me a little bit of trouble and a little extra fullness. So I'm just coming up to that end of that block here. I'm just going to stitch a few stitches past the intersection and cut my threads. Okay, and now I'm going to do the same thing on the other end where that one corner block was a little bit big. So I'm going to start a few stitches before I get to that intersection. Line everything up and just let the feed dogs do the work of taking in that little bit of extra fullness. It only takes a minute more to do it, and I do think it is a nice result to do it that way. You don't have to fight so much getting things to fit. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the quilt the other way around so that the center section is down and the border is up, because I have stitched the outside block. You can see that's already done. So now I'm just going to pick up 8 or 10 stitches before and resume sewing. Now this quilt is starting to get a little heavy and awkward. What I try to do is make the table beside me do the work so that it's supporting the weight. I don't want the sewing machine to have to pull the quilt up off my lap into the bed of the sewing machine. I think when we do that, it's too much drag and things start to get a little wonky. So I do make sure that the machine is not taking on the weight, that either I'm holding it up in position, or more likely that I've got the bulk of the weight of the quilt sitting on the table beside the machine. The advantage to sewing with the border up is that each time I come to a seam allowance here, I can make it go the direction that I want. If it were on the bottom,
it might be flipping any way it pleases, which is not a really big deal, but I can make it a little tidier and a little easier when it comes to the quilting phase. That's what I'm going to do. Again, just adjusting that bulk beside the machine so that nothing is dragging unnecessarily. So each time I stop, I'm just adjusting a little to make sure that everything's lined up nicely. Now I can see that I'm coming up to the end where I stitched that last block in place the other way up. So all I'm going to do is just make sure that everything is nice and flat, that I don't have a bubble forming here, because that would form a little plate. Here's where, right here is where the stitching starts that I did previously. I don't want to have a pleat. If I do have a bubble there, what I'm going to do is cheat a little bit and put a little pressure on the top just by pulling it towards me to let the feed dogs kind of stall out on the bottom a little bit to absorb that extra little bubble. But we were in good shape. There was nothing major there. So now I've just stitched over 6 or 8 stitches, and I'm going to cut my threads. So now we'll go and take this to the pressing surface. So we've got that whole top border seam pieced now, and I'm just going to come and press with a hot iron to set the seams. And then I decided that it was very much like the side borders that I wanted to press towards the middle. So I'm going to lay the border flat and press the center section away. This I just love. I love that secondary pattern emerging there. I think that's so fun. So go ahead and complete your pressing, admire all your hard work, and you've finished the sewing. Once you put the other border on, of course, you finished the sewing for session 5. We'll get ready for session 6 soon. Okay, did that clarify things a little bit?
Yeah,
Yes.
that was awesome. Thank you.
Okay, so you know, we're getting to the point with this quilt now that we're beyond just putting things together and quote unquote making the quilt. Now we're getting into the artistry and the technique to get the best results we can. Some quilters love this kind of stuff. I like it. If I can get it more precise, more perfect, then that's what I want to do. Other quilters don't have the time of day for this, and if that's you and you're happy with your product, that's great. There's no, you know, there's no judgment here. We're a no quilt police zone. So whatever works for you. Barbara, I am like you too, and she said she did it once, wasn't happy with it, did it a second time, it wasn't perfect, but she was not doing it a third time. That's me most of the time as well. So let me make the mistakes 2 or 3 times for you and figure out a couple of little tricks. But I think the basting will help us. I think the good habits we're developing in the pressing are only going to help. And then when things still aren't quite right, when we've got that one square that's just a little bigger, now we've got a couple more techniques of changing, whether it's up or down as we're stitching, to help correct any little imperfections there.
Well, now that you've shown those little tips, I am going to rip mine back. I am. I can't.
She just can't let it go.
I can't leave it like that. No. So I'll rip it back to with the wide one, and I'll base it, ease it in. Yeah,
okay.
Dang nabbit, it's going to be straight.
Right? There's a reason that everybody loves medallion quilts, but nobody wants to make them, right? Because that's what we get into with this. And we have the advantage of having this beautiful AccuQuilt system to get us as close as we are right now.
Oh yeah, can you imagine if we'd been hand cutting all
without the AccuQuilt? Oh my word, no. But you know, even the tools help us have a better product, but we still need to be developing our skills as we're going. So I hope those little tips will help you have the results that you're hoping for. Does anybody have any other questions? concerns,
So
suggestions?
you're pressing then for each of the sections, you always press towards the middle for your seams on this one.
When I'm joining the borders,
Yeah, when you're joining, no, for session 5, you're
Okay.
pushing them in towards the center.
I
That's
did.
what you did on that.
That's what I
border.
did.
Okay,
And
that's what that.
the reason why I did that is because I felt there were more seams in the borders than there were in the
Yeah.
center section of the quilt. You know, every time you're pressing a seam, you've got 3 choices. You can do it left, right, or open. And I really, you know, I don't think that there are hard and fast answers. I tried in the video to explain why I'm making the decisions I am. If you disagree, hey, that's great. Do it your
Yeah,
way. It's just, you know, it's just preference. I try to have the fabric go in the way that it's going to fight with me the least. So that's what I did in this session 5. I pressed the seam allowances towards the center of the quilt. In session 6, when we put that skinny border on, I pressed away from the center of the quilt because we had the big wide open section of the navy fabric where there's no seams at all. So it didn't make any sense to try and work against that. I had another thought, which has escaped my mind, as they are prone to do. Our next class, it feels early in the month. The 4th Tuesday in June is the 22nd. Okay, so I will see you at 10 o'clock on the 22nd. As always, feel free to post things in our group. I do have to ask, are you guys getting notifications? So this morning, are you getting a barrage of notifications? Yeah, I don't know how to change that for you. I try to do it so that I schedule the things to all post at the same time. So you'll have about half an hour or 45 minutes of it just going crazy. And then I should be able to leave you alone. But I think everything is in there. If I've missed anything or if you need clarification, just let me know. Otherwise, we'll see you next time.
Cool.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
One question
Bye.
before we go.
Yeah.
Before we go, with our next session, it's talking about multiple of blues.
Yes.
And I usually like to start cutting.
blues.
Yeah, like it's teal. It says teals on our sheet that we're the last half of session 6 that we're cutting assorted blue teals.
Yep.
And I'm just sort of looking at the picture that I have. Is it that those blues are going to be out in the stars later on as well, the same blues that we're using with the teals?
I
Because
believe
that was sort of confusing. I didn't buy my blues, so that's why I have to
let me
decide
just
how many
flip
blues
ahead.
to actually pick up.
Okay.
For the next.
So let me show you. I'll just hold up the page 10, which is the final assembly. So this is what
Okay.
we're doing in session 6, is all of these half square triangles. Okay.
And they're different colored blue.
They're different
That's what I'm
color
talking
blues.
about.
However, what they have done is picked one. You know what? Sorry. Let me pull this up on screen. Okay, you'll be able to see it better than if I feel like I'm.
No, I can see that, but
Just bear with me one quick sec.
What about the people that are using different colors? They might not necessarily have 3 different blues in their color in the fabric choices that they came up with for their quilt. So does that matter, or should you
No,
just
I don't think it
stick
does.
to whatever substitutes you made, just still use those substitutes? I
Yeah,
don't
I
think you
think
have to go out and buy blues necessarily.
it's a good time to kind of look ahead in the pattern.
no,
So what
no.
we're doing this month is this row here, and they have them in different shades. Then when they've formed the next and final border, you can see in these star blocks, they've used only one blue and the corner blocks.
The teal, yeah.
That sort of teal blue. Now, because I've done mine a little bit scrappy, I'm going to do this part fairly scrappy. And then I've got, I think I have one color that's going to be the focus of the stars here. So I'm going to do my stars consistent, but I'm probably going to keep that pretty scrappy to match that border. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, I was just looking to see what they had there, because to me, when I printed out, my printer may not have been, and of course you're going to adjust things as you go, but it looked like the corner borders or the corner stars in that one were different colors than the side points, so that if you were going to divide it up, yeah, see, if you look, the sides are different from the
yeah, the corner stars are
point,
different blues.
and-
Yeah.
So that's,
and then they can be pulled all into that triangle border for next time, all
Yeah.
those colors. If you're going to follow that, of course, we can always make all our own adjustments to how we want to do it.
right. So this is the original fabric version.
Right.
Yeah, you can see what she's done there.
So that's the teal and the blue. Okay.
Mhm. Oh, I know what I was going to say now. I remembered. That always comes to me eventually. Rosanne, thank you very much for sharing those posts from the various AccuQuilt groups. I've been following them, and the work that's coming out of them are so lovely. It, just in case anyone is interested, the lady, have I got it right, Busby, Marjorie or Mary Busby? Is that
Marjorie
right?
Busby.
Marjorie
Busby. Yes.
She's just starting another.
That's okay.
Yeah, she's starting another sew along
Yes.
in the next week or so, and I think is it a 14 or 15 week sew along? So it's quite
Well, but it's changed.
Oh, has it?
It changed a bit this week. Okay, so if you go to that one is AccuQuilt Qube Quilts.
Let me write this
And
down.
Marjorie Busby, yeah, Qube with the QUBE.
AccuQuilt. What was that
And
again?
I've started AccuQuilt Qube, QUBE.
QUBE.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's
Because that's-
Rosemary.
No, it's Marjorie Busby.
Marjorie.
She's the moderator. She's the owner of the site, basically, or has taken over the site, I think, from another lady who was doing it before. Marjorie has done quite a bit at AccuQuilt. I've started looking up her and researching her a little bit. She did some of the embroidery files for AccuQuilt. And she's also done a couple of other lessons, and it's Blue Feather Quilts is actually her website, not that you need it for this information. But what she's doing is a sew along, and what's really cool about it is she's using 3 blocks, and she's decided, instead of doing a 2x2 grid, which is what you get when you open up AccuQuilt, she's doing a 3x3 grid now. And what she's doing is she's doing 3 blocks that are very similar. One just using the cube, one using the cube and corners, and one using the cube and angles. So I'll just show you the pictures if you'd like.
Yeah, and we can also, Rosanne, maybe I can impose on you to share it with the group again, so that people can see that where she's just getting it started.
Yeah, I'll write it up. So that this is what she called, this is her, and it's going to be 12, so it'll be 12 weeks and then maybe a finishing.
Okay.
Because it'll be borders. This is called, this is the block 1, Prom Queen. And then this is done just with the cube. Then she's taken that and changed it slightly for when you're using the angles companion. You can see this isn't a half square triangle. You've now used another, and she's changed it again for the angles. And where now what she's done is she has added the little bow tie unit.
Yeah, so it works if you have just the cube, or the cube and one companion set, or the cube and both companion sets. So that's a really nice program. And just so you know, she offers these I believe it's for free to the group. It's a group you have to join on Facebook. And then once the program is finished, she assembles them all together and puts it as a pattern for sale. So if you don't have time to participate now, you can purchase it later on.
And if you go every Monday morning is when she posts, and you can just download it right there. And on top of it, she keeps it there for the duration. So if, let's say, you missed one Monday, you can still back up, but she's pretty tight at the end of the program because she wants to get going on next solo. And I have my one finished that I just finished up with her last week.
Oh, well, be sure and
or
share
2
a
weeks
picture
ago.
of that in the
So
group.
I think I showed a picture.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. And so that's where we're at.
Just one other thing
With that.
too, sort of other things I'll mention to you ladies. I just wanted to give you a bit of an explanation. You may have noticed in an email from Kindred Spirits last week from the store that there was a one-day AccuQuilt sale. And
Right.
I know these one-day sales are really hard on customers because they demand that you make your decisions and get your orders in all at once. And typically Kindred does not like to do things that way. But with our wholesaler agreement with AccuQuilt, we are restricted as to when we can put things on sale, what can be included in the sale, how long the sale runs, etc. So we are trying to bring you as many good sales from AccuQuilt as we can. But we are limited. So just a little tip, if you think there might be something that you would like for your AccuQuilt going forward, keep a little wish list somewhere tucked away and just be ready to pull the trigger when you get the email that items are on sale, because we are so restricted. But when the sales do happen, they're good ones. So last week was 25% off everything. So that includes all the cubes, all the cutters, everything. So there is money to be saved. Unfortunately, we just can't give you a lot of notice that the sale is coming, and we can't make it last longer. Again, it's all because of our essentially their franchisee restrictions with AccuQuilt. So set aside a little wish list is my best piece of advice. The other thing I wanted to mention to you is, since we met last time, there's been 2 key releases with AccuQuilt. There's a new cube. So the new cube is a teeny tiny one. It's a 4-inch cube. So everything is the same as what we're doing in our 8-inch cubes, only half the size. Okay. So if you're at all interested, take a peek at their introductory videos on AccuQuilt's YouTube channel, because once you've got that little 4-inch cube, you can really start combining things with your 4 and your 8 and then your 12. You've got a lot of possibilities, a lot of different combinations you can do. So they have the original cube, the companion angles, and the companion corners all available in that 4-inch size. So that's one thing. The other thing that's new, and totally, brand new idea here, is they have released setting triangles for each cube size. So when you're thinking about a quilt set on point, you need to have triangles to fill in on your sides and in your corners. And the latest die release is the setting triangles. I thought, well, I can do the math and cut the triangle. And then once I started watching their videos, I could begin to see how handy these would be when they begin to combine with your block on board dies. So let's say you've got a block on board, I'm drawing a blank on the name of the one that I'm thinking of, Morning Star, Morning Glory, something like that. Now you can take those beautiful block on board dies and set them on point and have all your triangles ready for you. So it really is going to speed things up and give you more options to combine your block on boards, your cubes, etc. So if you've got a minute and are looking for a bit of a brain break, check out their YouTube channel. They will have announcement videos for those 2 new items, the 4-inch cube and the setting triangles. The setting triangles are available, I believe, for every cube size. So something,
Yeah.
there's always something new and fun at AccuQuilt.
Outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. And,
Well,
and
sorry,
before we go,
just one quick question.
go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead,
Because
Barbara.
I don't have very many dies.
Mhm.
What is a block on board?
Okay, so block on board is a single, well, usually it's a single die and has everything you need to cut a specific block in that one die. For example, the Hunter Star die. It has
How
all,
big are these? Are they 12 inches?
no, most of them, you've got the
Depends.
hand crank go, correct?
Yeah, see,
Yeah,
that's the
most of them
trouble.
will go through that one. In fact,
Oh,
I
they
think
will.
yes, I think they all will. I think it's
Okay.
only the ones, the extra wide ones that go through the electric cutter are very few of them.
Okay, yeah, that was what I was thinking, that they wouldn't
Yeah.
fit in my hand crank one.
Yeah, if you haven't explored the block on board dies, do take a look at them. They are beautiful. Barbara, do you remember a couple years ago with the July Shop Hop? It was the year we did blue and white and we gave you the pre-cut block.
Yes.
That was a block on board die.
Oh, it's still hanging on my little design
Yeah.
wall in my workroom.
Yeah, so that it's all the pieces you need for one specific quilt block done on one die board. And they've taken a lot of classic blocks. There's the crossed canoe. There's is it Morning Star? Have I got that name right? The Hunter Star, the Lemoyne Star, Churn Dash. Lots of.
Now, how exactly do you use them? Do you stack up like all your different colors?
Yeah.
And run it through and then mix and match your colors to make the blocks?
Yes, it depends on which particular design you're doing. Some designs you may want your background color always in the same place. So then you would just you'd place your fabrics only to cut the die, the shape that you're covering with fabric.
Oh, okay.
But
yeah.
Tori,
Sam's got one there.
for an
Okay.
example, I've got quite a few block on boards and I am thoroughly enjoying them. This one is a 10-inch finished block on board called Chimney Sweep. And each of the dies that I have are on different size boards. Some are on 10 by 10, some are on 6 by 12. I even have one long one that's on a 10 by 24 because and of course it was probably more expensive than it was. So what they do is they give you the pieces and they actually write the letters on it.
Oh, see, I assumed that it was going to be in position on the board, kind of in the shape of it. That's why I was asking about fabric layout. I thought, how can you lay out your fabric?
Some are that way.
Okay, I gotcha.
Some are that way. So, but this one, because of how it's cut, it's a little bit different and they give you the directions and you can always go to AccuQuilt to get other directions. What you're talking about is, I've got another one here. Sorry, because I've been using them lately. You talked about cross canoes. We get this is cross.
He's doing a great
canoes.
sales job, Tori.
Sure is. Yeah,
Right.
you're hired, Roseanne.
See, yeah,
So
now that's
there's cross
okay.
canoes.
All right. So
And
you've obviously
basically
you use two
cross
fabrics
canoes
and
is
then
the
you
same
switch them
block
around. Yeah,
4 times.
excellent. Okay.
And so there it is on the board. Okay. But
That's it.
if we're finished that, I just want to give Kay England another plug because Kay England is the one who wrote our pattern. She has a website called Patchwork Staycation and Stay-Cation. And what she is doing right now is she is selling an old book of hers, PDF of it, called Spikes and Peaks for $5. And then she's releasing videos and you can get them on YouTube, but on her website is the best place. And she turns them all I think there's 11 quilts or something like that in her book. They're all compatible for cubes.
Excellent.
And
Cool.
she is quite a personality. So if you've got an 8-inch cube, you can do it. So what she did was, this is the first one that she released. out of the book. So for $5, you get that. Otherwise, you can just listen to her. She won't give you the sizes or whatever, but it's pretty easy to figure out once you understand cubes.
Sure.
So that was one of the things. I'll just show you a quick picture of the second one. Oh. So it just gives you an idea of some of the quilts that you have. So for $5, you get 11 quilts that are compatible with.
That's a pretty good deal. $5 for 11 quilt patterns. Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah,
I
and
would
that's the Titanic block, and she explains why she calls it the Titanic. And it's she's quite a hoot, actually. She's very funny. So
Great.
there you go. Those are some of the sites.
All right. Well, thank you, Sandy and Nathan.
I'll write it down.
We're all ready.
Thank you very
to go-
much.
to go. Okay,
Okay.
it's been fun chatting with you. Have a good
Okay, I don't usually have these out.
Bye-bye.
bye.
Hi, guys.
Bye. Sorry, Tori, I don't usually have these out,
Hey,
but I just happen to have them, so it was just hilarious.
love it. Your
that,
your
that you're talking
enthusiasm
about
is
it.
very contagious. It's fabulous.
Oh. Well, the thing is that you can do so much more. And I was looking for things to do last week in between, because between all my different so-longs that I'm doing. And so it was just a matter. So I went and cut this other one, and then I realized there was different blues. And so that's why I was just asking.
Your family must forget what you look like.
Well, I'm retired, and my husband loves YouTube downstairs.
Hey,
So this is my full-time job. I
happy
quilt
wife,
full-time,
happy life. I love
basically.
it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm thoroughly enjoying. I mean, I'm very well prepared. If you see my sewing room for this pandemic.
Well stocked, are you?
Yeah, and the AccuQuilt has really really helped me, because I tend to do a lot of kits. As you can tell, that's why I love pressing directions. That's my biggest thing, because I will spend hours working out the pressing directions to make sure that everything works. And so that's why I said, just give me the pressing directions ahead of time. I'm happy. But my fabric stash has been calling me because of the AccuQuilt.
Yes.
Because I look at something and go, oh, and then that one says, oh, pick me, I'd look perfect. And so I did a whole bunch of like, even the snowball die, like it just makes it, it's so much fun. I used all my 30s fabric, and I'm just having a blast.
Good for you.
So
Nice.
anyways, thank you, Tori,
Okay.
for letting me
Time.
plug a couple, especially England and these other sites. Okay, thanks.
Great.
Bye, guys.